Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right in, shall we? Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating essay titled Mothering for Sustainability by Oluyomi Oladavid. What she does in this piece is honestly kind of brilliant. She takes something that society usually views through a strictly biological or maybe just a personal lens, and she completely elevates it. She turns it into a macro-level strategic necessity. Throughout this explainer, we're going to dive into her work and see exactly how she builds this incredibly powerful argument.
And it all starts with this arresting core premise. Mothering is an all-in-one career like none other. Now, I want you to really notice her deliberate use of the word career there. She isn't framing mothering as just some biological role, right? It's not just a phase of life or a domestic duty to her. She is boldly defining it as a dynamic, all-encompassing profession. It's a role that demands an incredibly diverse, highly specialized skill set. And by framing it this way right out of the gate, she's demanding that we treat mothering with the exact same intellectual and economic respect that we give to a traditional corporate career.
So that framing naturally leads us to a pretty massive, thought-provoking question. How exactly does raising a child connect to the global economy? Like, how does she link the quiet, everyday acts of running a household to the huge, macro-level impacts of planetary sustainability? At first glance, it seems like a huge leap, but it actually makes total sense when you realize that unpaid domestic work makes up a massive chunk of global GDP. Depending on the country, it's often estimated to be upwards of 10 to 40%. She builds this brilliant, highly logical bridge between those two worlds, and she does it by completely redefining the daily tasks of a mother. To start making that connection, she offers this really beautiful comparison to Mother Nature. She notes that mothers, much like nature itself, are always present even when absent. It's a fascinating duality she presents here. For her, a mother's influence is this eternal constant. Yes, she delivers this through spoken words, but also through silent actions. She leads by example, whether she's, as she puts it, stooping to serve or rising to lead. Her impact is almost atmospheric, you know? It shapes the very environment her children grow in, long after she's actually left the room. From there, she does something super interesting. She starts redefining mothers using titles you would totally expect to find on a corporate directory. First up, she calls them development chairs. Think about what a development chair actually does in a big organization. They're meticulously tracking progress, analyzing data, and implementing structural changes. Well, she points out that mothers do exactly this. They are constantly monitoring physical, emotional, and psychological growth, and they're always pivoting and instituting change in a child's life to make sure they develop healthily. Building right on that corporate theme, she then defines mothers as investors. This is the ultimate example of delayed gratification. I mean, an investor allocates capital today hoping for a bigger return tomorrow, right? Well, she views mothers as doing this flawlessly. But instead of financial capital, they're investing their current time, their immediate energy, and a ton of emotional bandwidth. She says they are priming futures while present in today. Basically, they're doing the grueling, everyday work right now to secure a thriving, stable future for the next generation. Then, she shifts gears just a bit to a more foundational, agricultural metaphor. Farmers. Here, she highlights how mothers take raw, early potential, which she calls the seeds, and they nurture them. And hey, farming is definitely not a passive activity. It takes intense attention to the environment, weathering storms, and just endless patience. She illustrates that mothers cultivate these tiny seeds of character, talent, and intellect until they blossom into robust, fruitful trees. Trees that will eventually provide shade and sustenance for the whole world. Okay, so obviously all that cultivation requires some intense management, which leads to her next definition, management executives. If you have ever seen a household run smoothly, you know for a fact it requires high-level executive function. She details her view of mothers as highly efficient leaders who expertly allocate limited resources. Whether that's budgeting money, managing time, prepping food, or distributing emotional support, they harness every single available resource. And she says they direct it toward worthy ends, optimizing the family's outcome the exact same way a CEO optimizes a company's bottom line. And of course, the culmination of all this management and investment is teaching. She labels mothers as educators, but look closely at her specific phrasing here. She says they are indoctrinating a generation via actions and words. She isn't just talking about helping a kid with their math homework. She is talking about the deep transmission of core values, ethics, and cultural norms. She clearly recognizes that the mother is the primary educator shaping the moral and intellectual foundation of entire generations, way before they ever step foot inside a formal classroom. Now, amidst all these heavy corporate titles, she weaves in this deeply poetic metaphor. She calls mothers resilient lilies, noting their incredible ability to thrive even in difficult places and circumstances. It's an image that just perfectly captures her observation. Lilies are delicate, they're beautiful, yet they possess this quiet, unbelievable resilience. She is really honoring the fact that mothering often happens under harsh conditions, maybe under immense stress or scarcity, and yet mothers continuously manage to create beauty, life, and stability anyway.
So, how does this all tie together? Well, she actually maps out a really fascinating scale of impact. It all starts with those daily actions we just talked about: cultivating seeds, priming futures, managing resources. She argues that these actions have a direct micro impact, basically acting as the engine of the household economy. But she absolutely doesn't stop there. She links this household stability directly to a macro impact. Her overarching thesis here is that the foundational work of the household economy is absolutely pivotal to global planetary sustainability. You literally cannot have a sustainable globe without sustainable households, and you can't have sustainable households without these mothering actions. And what's particularly powerful about her thesis is exactly who it applies to. She makes a point to use this incredibly inclusive phrasing: authentic mothers and mothering minds. She is making it crystal clear that this kind of nurturing, sustaining leadership is a universal necessity. It goes far beyond just biological motherhood. Anyone who steps into this role, anyone who manages, invests, cultivates, and educates with that specific nurturing intent possesses a mothering mind, and she argues that they are the true anchors of our world. To really appreciate the depth of everything we're discussing, we have to talk about the mind behind the text. Here is the author Oluyomi Oladevid. When you read her work, you are encountering a highly unique blend of perspectives. Her writing spans technical insights, policy briefs, and deep contemplations. She's not just writing sentimental poetry here. She is actively looking at the role of mothers through the analytical lens of a policy strategist, all while maintaining this deeply humanistic, contemplative core.
Let's explore her personal background just a bit more because it directly informs her worldview. She describes herself as a proud Nigerian who deeply loves people, and she's driven by a profound concern for global development and transformation. She's a generator of solutions, a policy strategist, but importantly, she also heavily grounds her work in her deep faith. She notes that she is guided by her Father God, whom she beautifully describes as the wheel within my wheels. It's exactly this intersection of her cultural heritage, her policy-mindedness, and her deep spiritual grounding that gives her perspective such unique authority. And all of this analysis, all of this redefinition culminates in this massive rallying call to action. Let us stand up for mothers everywhere and those who mother well today and always. It is a demand for recognition. Think about it. If mothering is the bedrock of the global economy and planetary sustainability, then we absolutely must support, celebrate, and structurally uplift the people who are out there doing this world-building work. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to carry with you today. How will the mothering minds in your life shape our shared global future? Take a moment to really reflect on Oluyomi Oladevid's insights. Look around at the authentic mothers and the mothering minds in your own community. They are the investors, the farmers, the executives, and the resilient lilies who are silently yet powerfully sustaining our world. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for those unseen forces shaping our tomorrow.